Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the 18th episode of the Limerick Junior Soccer Focus with myself, Adrian, Finnin, and Aidan Ryan this evening. Plenty to get through, as always, on this evening's show. Obviously, to discuss the FAI exit of Regional United last weekend, obviously in disappointing circumstances after extra time. The loss in cup fixtures that took place, which all ended up being very entertaining and tight encounters, to be fair. But we also have a big weekend to look forward to with Ballynanty Rovers and Fairview Rangers in FAI Cup action, as well as three fixtures in the Limerick Premier Division, Limerick District League Premier Division, that is. So plenty to get through, Aidan, as always. We'll start off with on a sour note to some degree, Regional United bowing out of the FAI Junior Cup, 1-0 defeat against Newmarket after extra time. You know, we did pin this as a tight encounter, and it turned out to be exactly that.
Turned out to be exactly that, Adrian. I did have Newmarket slight favourites going into the game. Disappointed to see Regional going out, obviously, and another Limerick side going out, so that was a big disappointment. I watched the match. Probably didn't see the total football I thought I would see on that surface, Adrian, given the quality that I thought was in both sides. But nevertheless, it was an intriguing game. I enjoyed the game, and I think overall, I would have to say probably Newmarket just about deserved to get over the line. They created more chances over the 90 minutes and in extra time. And I thought they possessed players on the pitch who made more of an impact in the game than some of the regional players that I was maybe expecting to do the same, but who didn't maybe turn up on the day, Adrian. But I thought Newmarket Celtic deserved to get through it, you know.
Do you think that Sean Russell will be maybe disappointed, Aidan, with it, or do you think that he'll feel, his side were just edged out by an experienced team?
I think he'll be disappointed maybe with the way they played, Adrian. In terms of the experience, I think both sides were balanced. Very impressed with some of the Newmarket youngsters in their team. Had a couple of really good players. The left-sided centre-half, Harvey Cullinan, really impressed me, just back from Sheffield United.
Yeah.
By all accounts, had a spell over there with their 18s and a couple of matches with their 23s. I thought he was absolutely outstanding. The other two centre-halves weren't bad either. You did experience David O'Grady, and you had another young lad called Ethan Fitz. And, of course, they had Shane Cusick behind them. And they were steady enough. Now, listen, there's small percentages in matches, Adrian, as you know, in big cup games. You might only get a couple of chances in big cup games. And Regional only had a couple of chances in this game. And they didn't, when they presented themselves, they didn't take them. They had 2 gilt-edged chances in the first 10 minutes. They didn't take them. They had a decent chance just before the end of the match with Kieran O'Connell, didn't take it. And Owen Duff also had a chance in extra time. Probably didn't, harder chance, but probably should have done better with it, and they didn't do it. And in these cup games, as I said, you might only get 1 or 2 chances, and you have to take them. To credit Newmarket, Adrian, they pressed high up the pitch, and we're talking about how Regional play and how they want to play out of the back all the time. They just didn't let them play out of the back, and as a result, a lot of the time, Regional had to kick the ball long. And Newmarket were picking up the first ball off a header or a challenge, and then picking up the second ball to, in my opinion, dictate an awful lot of this match. And they certainly had, in my opinion, Dave McCarthy, the best player on the pitch. I thought he was absolutely outstanding. You'll be familiar with him, Adrian. We spoke about him before. He had a spell with Jamesborough a few years ago, but he's been playing with Newmarket for a long time now. And I thought he was outstanding, especially in the second half. And he's part in the lead goal, in the winning goal, where his back was to the play around the halfway line, got it on the half volley, swung a ball across the pitch to a young substitute, young Lennon, who had been introduced, crossed a fantastic ball into the box. And the centre forward, Darragh Leahy, who I can only describe as a bit of a rash, like a rash to the 2 centre halves for Regional. He was just all over them the whole match. Not technically proficient, but gave 100%. Can play in front, can play behind, but never give them a moment's peace. And he stretched his body and got a fantastic header into the corner of the net.
Yeah, the cross,
Quality
considering
goal.
it, you're talking in extra time, the build up to the goal and the cross
Yeah.
from the position you were in was top quality, to be fair.
Top quality. The lead pass from Dave McCarthy, who I said was outstanding, especially in the second half. I thought he dictated the game. And the cross from the young lad in the wing, young Lennon, who had come on as a sub in a big game like that, did well to get the ball out of his feet, pinpoint cross. But Lee still had a bit of work to do, Adrian, and God stretched his long body to get at the ball, and a fantastic header. Should have sealed the game for him afterwards, Adrian, in extra time as well. He did 1-1 with Robert Shire, but the goalkeeper psyched him out and made a good save. But as I said, overall, a well-organised, lively Newmarket Celtic team probably deserved to get over the line.
Yeah, and they're back into the last day of an FAI, obviously, now, as we said, at the expense of regional. We hope that'll be the only casualty, and obviously, of the three Limerick sides that were left in the last 16. But we will come on to the Ballynanty game and Fairview game that take place on Saturday and Sunday this week soon. Obviously, the Lawson Cup took place as well. It turned out to be three really competitive fixtures in those ones. Two of them decided by a penalty shootout. I was at the game in Limerick Institute of Technology, where Ballynanty and Fairview quite cancelled each other out for long periods. I felt there was very a little clear-cut chances in the game. You might have seen it from Pat Sheehan's video, the Brian Ahern acrobatic effort. He did make an impact for Fairview when he came off the bench, actually, with about 15 minutes to go. He had 2 or 3 chances. He had a header as well that was saved by Kevin Walsh. Ballynanty felt that they had a big appeal for a penalty as well. It's hard to know, I think the ball did strike the hand of the defender, but it was actually in against his body. So, yourself, there'd be vociferous calls from that Ballynanty sideline for a penalty, but it wasn't given anyway, and probably rightly so. You could see both sides of the argument, to be fair. But obviously, Josh McCarthy, the goalkeeper for Fairview, then the young goalkeeper who has, in the last few games, displaced Aaron Savage anyway, was the hero saving penalties from Aidan Hurley, who we had on the show recently with us, and obviously Darragh Hughes as well. So he'd be very happy with that. And to be fair, Fairview will be very happy to get out of LIT Aidan with a victory at all, because, in some ways, it looks like the gap has really closed between those two sides.
Yeah, and it was the big game of the Lawson Cup, and I suppose the big surprise to me, Adrian, was the lack of goals. I mean, the last 2 meetings, I think we 10 or 11 goals in the last 2 meetings, didn't we? Yes, so a big surprise that there was no goals in play, and given what you said, there weren't many chances. So obviously both teams were out with a defensive mindset not to lose the game rather than try and win the game. But listen, it's a cup win, and I'm sure Paul Danaher's delighted to be in the next round of that. And they've also put out one of their rivals, Adrian, a big rival, gone out of the competition. So it might be a competition now that's given that that's your target and trophies that Fairview will be after.
Yeah, absolutely. To be fair as well, I know that Ballynanty, Aidan, were missing a few players in the squad. They had a very light bench, to be fair as well. Now Fairview were also missing the likes of Conor Ellis, Wayne Colbert, you had Shane Tracy on the bench as well. But obviously, it was probably in one way, Aidan, before the FAI games this week. I know some would say it's a game you don't want because they're looking at it from the point of view of maybe you might pick up injuries, but surely you want a competitive fixture like that a week out from an FAI game that both of these sides will be playing.
I think you want a decent fixture definitely before a big FAI game, and you want to be getting your players decent game time, Adrian, because Ballynanty didn't have all those players available for the game against Croom the week before. So it was important that they got game time, and I think Aidan Hurley came on, didn't he? And Haberdeen came on. Yeah, so important that they got game time before that big fixture next Saturday for them. It looks like Fairview played close to full strength side, so they would have got a good run out of that. Listen, they have 2 big games ahead the weekend, so very important they got that match fitness into the players.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to move on now to the Nina and Pike game that was on at Brickfields, that was also 0-0, and it went all the way to penalties as well. Obviously, now in the Lawson Cup, it goes straight to penalty shootout as well. It doesn't go to extra time in the Lawson Cup. Pike came out on top of that one. I know I was speaking to Killian Fitzpatrick afterwards, who felt that Nina were probably the better side in the first half, but that Pike grew into it outside of a 10-minute spell in the second half and were the better side as well, and looked threatening. No surprises really from set pieces, he said, as well. We'll move on to it as well, because incredibly, Pike and Nina will play each other again next week when it comes to the top 6 of the Premier. But Again, another tight affair. Not that you'd be that surprised considering how many times these two have shadow boxed at this stage.
Yeah, well, I wanted to spell the myth going around, Adrian, that Nina and Pike are going to amalgamate next season. Given that they know each other so well and they're going to be playing each other again next week. But yeah, Killian will take a lot out of it. One thing, he's trying to build a new side there. A lot of young players coming into the squad. Just has a couple of experienced players to help him along. And the fact that they held Pike scoreless will have given him, give the team and him a lot of confidence going forward. Maybe a good chance to get an upset there, if you call it an upset, Adrian. But listen, they've lost the match, and it's typical Pike. Pike have ground out another result. And it's just that it keeps rolling along with Pike the whole time. They don't concede. They try and grind out results. I think Steve McGann made a comeback in that match as well, Adrian, as far as I know.
Yeah.
Which they'll be delighted about because he hadn't played in the last couple of weeks. But Pike are into the next round. So they'll be delighted with that. As I said, Killian can take a little bit of heart from the thing before they meet again in the league on Sunday.
Absolutely. And the other game we picked up on last week was obviously you had Somerville hosting Mungret Regional. No, I certainly thought as it was coming up to half time at Portland Park, I said I would not like to be in that Mungret dressing room at half time. They were 3-1 down. Evan O'Grady had scored 2 goals for Somerville. Looked like the cup upset was all but there. I was thinking to myself, this really would, and I know I probably was reading a bit too much into it, but at the time I was saying to myself, this could be a season defining half of football now for Mungret, because if they don't show any character and they go to this competition against Somerville, you're looking at it, everyone, Richie, the whole squad would be deflated. The only positive that will come out of it is they scored 4 unanswered goals, and got over the line. And I suppose, as you always say, that's what cup football is about.
Yeah, and what a cup game this was, Adrian. To see the team from the lower division ahead at half time like that, and the end line in sight for a major cup shock. But listen, you got to credit Richie now. He must have certainly got into the team at half time, and there might have been a few of the Alex Ferguson cups flying around the place, I'd say.
So.
And missing fellas' heads, and Richie. But listen, great to see them coming back from that. And it's if you're Richie Burke, you're going into the next game saying we're 2 games unbeaten. They beat Janesborough in this competition, scored 3 goals. They scored 5 goals away from home last Sunday, 8 goals. All right, conceded a few, but it's 2 wins on the trot. They haven't been winning a lot this season. So listen, a fantastic result for him to literally get out of jail and turn it around. But for Mark Blake, if you're Mark Blake, obviously the league is the target, but you're going to look at this game and you learn from it. The experience you'll get from this is what we need to aspire to.
Yeah.
These standards we need to get to. He'll have seen from the Gorey game in the FAI, and now he'll have seen from this game where they've put up decent performances. And certainly in this game of Sunday, where they were 3-1 ahead, I think he'll learn loads from it. Maybe how to work and seeing out the game a little bit better and how to manage the second half, no matter what's been thrown at you. Going forward, I think it'll be a great experience, not only for Mark, but for the whole squad, Adrian. But a great comeback by Mungret, there's no doubt about it.
Yeah, absolutely. It brings us on now to the FAI Junior Cup previews, Aidan. Obviously, Saturday at 1 o'clock, Ballynanty go to Old County. We obviously mentioned how Old County are a relatively new organisation. It's only their 3rd year in existence, obviously, so it's unbelievable achievement really to get to the last 16 of an FAI and have a good home draw in that as well. You mentioned the last time out, they beat Evergreen as well, who, would have been thereabouts for a few years as well. Strong enough side from Kilkenny. So there's a bit of pedigree in that alone. And I know that Derek Radish, was saying that they do look a really good side. They have seen the game against Evergreen from what I know. The positives for Ballynanty, I suppose, I know I mentioned that they had a very small squad. Maybe I think there was only, for them anyway, 14, 15 players available last Sunday. But they also have Cian Fitzgerald now back for this game. Cian Power is also available after being away due to work commitments. Steve McNamara will be back available as well. And as you said, Aidan Hurley and having Gabido came on against Fairview for much needed minutes as well, because they have been 2 important players. So at least, I suppose, in that respect, Aidan, they'll be at almost full strength, you'd imagine, as much as you can be in junior level football anyway. I
think they'll have a full strength squad going up for this game, Adrian, and I'm sure the management team will have worked hard this week to get the players back in tune. Those players that had missed the last couple of weeks, those players that were carrying a few knocks and that, and I think they'll be listening. I think they'll be ready for the game Saturday in the 11 full squad. And we've spoken about this already, Adrian. They're going into this game red hot favourites, and I think a lot of people around the country are expecting Ballynanty to win this game comfortably by a few goals. But this is a banana skin game. These lads will be ready for this Old County FC. They'll be ready for this. A very good victory in the last round away. Remember now, it was away to Evergreen. Now, so far as I know, it was on the all-weather pitch down in Evergreen that they won. They won on penalties, and they play on an all-weather pitch as well, which might be the best in terms of preparation for Balla, obviously, because they don't play on an all-weather pitch regularly. But these lads will be well schooled. I spoke about their manager, Maxie McCann, the experience he has previously in the League of Ireland, especially at underage level. And they have a few players in the ranks like Callum Keane, James Farrell, Owen Rowe, who've all come from under-19 football, from Pats and Rovers and Bows. So these players will be well schooled. He's a very experienced manager. So far as I know, Adrian, they're unbeaten all season.
Actually wasn't aware of that, no.
The league. Yeah, they haven't lost in the league. They're into the last 16 of the Leinster Junior Cup. And their last league game, the weekend, I think they played Saturday evening. They played St. Francis, who are top of the league. I think they have a game in hand in them, and they're a point behind. They drew 1-1. So they'll be coming into the game in good fettle. But Balla are also coming into the game in good fettle. They're in decent enough form. I know they lost on penalties to Fairview in the Lawson Cup, but they're in a good position in the Munster Junior with a draw away to Charleville. Going well in the league. Very good squad, a lot of potential, a lot of power and pace. And if they're right on Saturday, there's no reason why they can't go up and win this game, even though it's away from home and on an all-weather pitch. They need to be able to handle the occasion, and they have an experienced management team there that should be able to help them through that. Plus the experienced players they do have in the team, like Aidan Hurley and Steve McNamara, etc.
Yeah, any FAI game away from home, like you mentioned, Aidan, is going to be a difficult encounter. I suppose just, from looking at it from the outside for years and looking at Limerick teams and the gripe Limerick teams have had, probably because, and I would say, maybe making excuses for themselves sometimes in the past, going to the likes of Dublin and saying that it was all Dublin officials and that was the problem. You know yourself, you've heard the spiel. But is there always something a bit different about, travelling to Dublin, especially when you're a Limerick side? Because I do always feel like the Dublin teams, because they have Leinster Senior League and the likes, they do feel that maybe we value our junior setup a lot more than they do. They kind of seem to have that bit of edge about them when they play Limerick sides as well. There does always seem to be from the outside. Do you agree that there is that bit of extra bite when Dublin sides play Limerick sides, or is that just in the heads of us in Limerick?
Yeah, I feel that we've overblown that a little bit, Adrian. I think the quality down here is just as good, and it always has been as good as the teams in Dublin. I think in the last years, obviously, Sheriff, given that they were so dominant and actually beat Limerick teams quite a few times on runs to the FAI and all that, I think maybe that had cast a shadow over maybe an inferiority complex to a certain extent when Limerick teams were travelling up to Dublin. But listen, that shouldn't be the case, because the quality down here is just as good. And it's up to senior players and it's up to management teams to make sure they have their teams well prepared for these matches, and that they're going out with the mindset that, listen, you're going out playing 11. Obviously, you respect the opposition, Adrian. Of course, you respect the opposition, but when we get out onto the pitch, that respect has to go out the window. You have to go out and do your job and try and win the game. Simple as that.
And this is one game, Aidan, and it's not just Ballynanty that I'll be talking about with this, but we did mention, obviously, at the start of the season that there used to be question marks about Ballynanty and their temperament. You're going to Dublin now, where there's going to be a really big crowd for Old County, you'd imagine. Obviously, Balla will have their huge support as well. There's going to be a lot of roaring. There's going to be a lot of things to distract you around the pitch. This really is a game where those Ballynanty players need their discipline and not coming home with having a player sent off and wondering what might have been. And I wouldn't just say that if it was just Ballynanty. It's every team, but this is a really important game for them, for that.
Yeah, well, Adrian, you don't want Limerick teams coming back here with their tail between their legs making excuses. That shouldn't be the way. We should be bigger than that. I think, obviously, the first half of this game is going to be vital in terms of how Ballynanty get through the tie or not. They need to be coming in at half-time with a clean sheet. I've said it before, get into half-time with a clean sheet. That's the first priority. If you can nick a goal, very well, nick a goal, because you're not giving the opposition anything, hopefully, to fight for in the second half. You're on the front foot. And they have the players, Adrian, in their armour to cause the Old County loads of trouble. With James Fitzgerald, Adrian Power, Haberdine, you know, you have that quality that is there in these players. So they got to go take the game by the scruff of the neck. Make sure they don't give anything away. There's a strong defence there. You'll have the likes. Well, can't forward what the team will be, but you'll be looking at surely Thomas Burns and Aidan Hurley in front of that back four. Let's make sure we're giving nothing away and take the game by the scruff of the neck and try and dominate it. Yeah,
obviously that'll be a very interesting game to watch and follow on Saturday. And Sunday then another trip for a Limerick side. And you've got Gorey Rangers taking on Fairview Rangers. That'll be a 2:00 kickoff in Wexford. Obviously plenty of Fairview supporters travelling to this one as well. I suppose, you know, Fairview overcame a huge test in the last game, considering Stephen Bradley was sent off. Now, you know, it being that as it may, Stephen Bradley is going to be a huge loss now as a result of that for this game. But he was sent off. The team still got through. Jack Garrett late equaliser, went through in the end after against Athenry, which was a huge test. You know, Gorey Rangers, considering the trip that it is, and considering Gorey would be decent at home, a huge test for Fairview Rangers. And looking at the game last week where you overcome that game against Ballynanty, I suppose the only concern you'd have, I suppose, if you're Paul Danner, is that two of the team anyway will definitely not be playing, and that Blake Curran, the left full, and Cian McNamara have already played in the FAI. So they won't be available to Fairview. And obviously then you've got like Conor Ellis and Wayne Colbert, who are obviously still struggling with injuries as well. So he wasn't able maybe to get close as what he would have liked maybe to the team that would play against Gorey.
Yeah, that would be a huge worry going into this game. And a couple of vital players you mentioned there, Adrian. And there's a few doubts about them. And then the fact that you have those other players cup-tied, and they have been used regularly in the last few weeks in the team. So obviously they won't be available. But, you know, the loss of Stephen Bradley for me is absolutely huge, Adrian. I think he's so important to this team.
And was last week as well, to be fair.
Yeah, it just goes about listen, I worked with him. Just goes about his business so quietly on the pitch, making the tackles, covering the ground, stopping the opposition going into little pockets of space to play, wins the ball back, gives it to the players who want to express themselves and want to play. Real leader out in the pitch without being that vocal is a real leader on the pitch, and is a fulcrum for that team to build their play around. So I think he's going to be an absolutely huge loss to them. Now there's no doubt there's loads of quality in this team and on the periphery. Now, having said all that, I still have a doubt about that back line. I've been talking about it all season. They have improved. There's no doubt about that. Those players in that back line have improved. They're defending far better. The problem you now have as
well, Aidan, is sorry to cut across you, but the problem you now have as well for that is you will have Jake Dillon and Jason Cross there, but you're taking Blake Curran out of left back. Jeffrey Judge played at right back. He'll probably be needed for midfield, you'd imagine, now with Stephen Bradley being out. So there will be shuffles there.
Yeah, but I'd be looking at strengthening my defence first if I was a manager. That's the first thing. Get my back four and my keeper right, and make sure that they're as strong as we can, especially away from home, as strong as possible. So I wouldn't be too surprised to see Jeffrey Judge playing left full, Adrian. I wouldn't be too surprised if that call was made. He has done the job there before. He's a very competent player, a very safe player in that position. Needs to watch his discipline, obviously. But I wouldn't be too surprised if they did shift him in there. This will be a really tough game, Adrian. You've seen Gorey, good on set pieces, physical when they have to be physical, can play a bit of football, will stay in the game, will be very fit. Beat Tramore away from home in the last round, kept the clean sheet, won 3-0. Beat Somerville before that, obviously away from home, going well in the league. And actually, as you know, Adrian, we have a worldwide audience listening to this podcast. And my friends in Gorey text me during the week to say that I got a couple of things, or just one thing wrong in an episode a couple of weeks ago. I said they were out of the Leinster Junior Cup, which they aren't. They're actually into the last team. So I'm glad to correct it for our friends in Gorey who are listening to us week in, week out, which is great to see, by the way. But it'll be a tough game for Fairview, make no doubt about it. But I think they have enough to come through, Adrian. As I said, no matter what forward, if you can feed that forward line,
yeah.
and they
I was just about to say, like, if you, like, don't get me wrong, I think that maybe the two wide players, Coughlin and Rainsford, weren't brought into the game enough by Fairview against Ballynanty. But, you know, when Darragh Rainsford did get at Adam Costello, there was joy there. He could play on both feet, right and left foot. You know, if those guys are on form, I could see Fairview coming through. But I suppose it all depends on the day.
I think they'll raise their game, though, Adrian, for this. You know, they'll raise the game for this. There's no doubt about it. And Coughlin's the same. Coughlin's 2-footed, can come in his right and go out his left. And depending on who's fit to play up front, Jack Ara, in my opinion, a fantastic player. Not the same type of player as Conor Ennis, as I've alluded to before, but can play in front, link the play, can score goals. And if Ellis is available, can run the channels, gives you a different option, regular goal scorer as well. You just got to feed these guys with the right ball and let them off, let them play. Make sure you're nice and tight at the back. I think they have enough to come through the game if the right service is given to the front.
Yeah, certainly. It will be interesting to see. I suppose we've relatively limited time, Aidan, to discuss our three Premier games. But I suppose just to give a bit of we'll go to Janesborough and Coona first. Janesborough haven't had much football at all, Aidan, in recent weeks, and that's been a gripe of the lower Premier sides actually in recent weeks, that they haven't got fixtures. In the defence of the fixture secretary and the league, the lack of referees possibly, and the fact that you've had to get through so many Lawson games, FAI Munster Junior has been priority. That to me on the face of it would seem like the reason for that. But Janesborough facing Coona, it's so tight at the bottom, Aidan. Munger to play in Charleville as well. You've got Munger on 11 points, and Crewe Park, who are in the 7th place, are on 17 points. It is incredibly tight. You've got, I think, is there 4 teams on 17 points, and then, or 3 teams on 17 points, and then Janesborough on 14, and then Munger on 11. I mean, it's incredibly tight. So this weekend, you know, could be defining, particularly for Mungers. You know, if Mungers lose their game against Charleville, that'll put Charleville further on ahead of them. And then if Janesborough or Coona pick up points, then they could see themselves really cut adrift.
Yeah, it wouldn't be surprising to say that these are 6-pointers, Adrian, for teams that can win them. Like you said, Janesborough haven't had a lot of football in weeks, so they'll be a little bit rusty. The last game, I think, was against Munger in the Lawson Cup, which the last 3-1. Coona have conceded 8 goals in the last 2 games, and this has been my bugbear about Coona, just conceding too many goals. Lost to Bala 4-0 in the league, and I think they lost to Nina in the one of the cups 4-0 as well. Was it the last?
Lost. And
I think if Shane Hanlon has Janesborough right for this game, I think they can win it. The only word of warning is Coona won the last league game up there in Janesborough 1-0. So they'll take heart from that. But Janesborough need to be getting a result, certainly, but certainly a win would be a huge help for them. I think they might get over the line in this.
And I know Shane Hanlon's brought in a couple of players, and obviously, we know Thomas Stark is back there. You know, Dylan Kelly Higgins from Ballynanty. But then I suppose on the flip side, there's more as well that I just can't remember right now off the top of my head. But on the flip side of it, you can do all the training you want, but Shane would have definitely preferred a couple more games going into the likes of these matches, because, you know, trying to get those, I suppose, combinations, etc., right, you know, and trying to get the players familiar with each other. Yeah,
no matter how competitive your training is, it's not the same as playing a match on a Sunday, where it's just a different kettle of fish altogether in terms of match fitness. The inclusion of Thomas Clark will be huge. He'll be a big leader for that team on the pitch, because it's relatively a young team now, and he'll be good in both boxes. Thomas will be a threat in the opposition box, and I think he'll make a difference to that team. And he'll be a leader in the dressing room as well, which is very important. Now, they did lose Killian O'Shea, Adrian. He's gone to Newport. So he will be a loss, in my opinion. I watched him a couple of times earlier on the season. I was very impressed with him. Very, very competent winger, 2-footed as well, can play on the right and on the left. Big game for both teams, Adrian. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose if you're looking at it, as I said, from Munger's point of view, they're at home against Charleville. If you're bottom of the league, Aidan, and you want to keep those teams with you and obviously climb yourself, home advantage, particularly, goes without saying, is so important to Richie. He'll need the likes of your Keane McNicholases and those type of players to really step up, which, as you said, they have scored, I think, is it 8 to 9 goals in their 2 games, one of them obviously against Somerville, but yet still scored. You have your Pa Hearn there as well, who you'll be familiar with, obviously. He'll need the likes of those guys to chip in with the goals. In saying that, I know it's a big bugbear of Richie's. Conceding goals is something he definitely hates, and he'll really be hoping that some of those guys can take leadership at the back, because they are relatively young in that respect.
Yeah, it's a massive game for Adrian. Richie's going into the territory now where they have to be getting 3 points out of games. I mean, you look at that other game there. Jamesborough and Kuna wouldn't be disappointed with a draw. Richie can't. I don't think Richie can afford draws at the moment. I think he has to go and just start winning a few matches. Now, he has won those last 2 games, albeit they're cup games, but they will give the team loads of confidence. On the other hand, you've Charleville coming in, still in the Munster Junior, looking forward to that in 2 weeks or in a week's time. Have been going reasonably well. I know they're your top pick to win the big shield.
And in saying that as well, Aidan, I suppose if you talk about Mungret, obviously there's a tendency, and I suppose in some ways they have to be careful, because there might be a tendency, particularly at home, to say we need to win, which then leads you to kind of maybe push up the field higher. Now, Charleville are the most dangerous team that you can do that against, because Shane Dillon literally loves to play off the shoulder. Yeah,
and Shane Dillon will take a lead role for that Charleville team now that Keane Mack is gone. There'll be a lot of votes on him to keep that team going and chip in with a few goals. And Shane is a huge threat in behind the defence. The runs, he bends his runs, he's hard to pick up. A low centre of gravity and a natural in front of goal will always chip in with his few goals. But look, I think Richie will do his homework for the match. It stems to me like a draw. I feel this game will finish in a draw. I know Richie might like me to Richie Burke won't fancy me saying that, but I feel this game will end in a draw. I think Charleville will have enough to get a point out of the game. Should be a good game now. Should be a lively game. Very competitive match.
Yeah. I suppose very briefly, Aidan, to finish on Pike versus Nina, like we said earlier on, you were talking about a game that could be fit for a draw. This could be fit for a draw. I mean, there was a draw last week, so you'd imagine they know even more about each other. Probably know what each other are having for breakfast at this stage in the morning, that's for sure. But, Pike will look at this and say, right, we're at home here. Fairview and Ballynanty both preoccupied with the FAI. We really need to put out a statement here and go ahead and get 3 more points.
Yeah, it's a massive game for Pike. These league games are massive for Pike. It was a bit like the regional game they were playing, another massive game for Pike. They got a point out of it. They'll be disappointed they didn't take the 3. I saw enough in that league game to suggest that Pike will raise their game yet again, Adrian, and get over the line and beat Nina. Obviously, Killian will have other thoughts about that. But Pike are at home. Steve McGann back. Nice big pitch. I think Pike will get through it and get